He remembered something. He didn't quite know what, but he sensed that memory welling up inside him. He shifted on the cold ground, pulling the sleeping bag up around his neck, shivering slightly, but still trying to pin down that memory on this cold street, in this cold place, in this cold year. A noise passed by in the distance, sharp, high-pitched, making him jump, react, twitch even. He thought, listened closer. He knew what it was. It was an ambulance. He heard plenty living round here, sleeping round here, for if you could call this living, this was not truly living. This was just sleeping. Sleeping round here, in a sleeping bag, near a tent. Sometimes in the tent, other times not. The tent, well, that smelt of urine. Not his, you'll understand, but that of passers-by who had come out of the expensive eateries nearby and had, almost sounding like the officers in the battalion, relieved themselves all over his home, his place of residence. Not so much residence, more his place of shelter, more the only place he could really go to get out of the biting wind and sometimes the falling snow. He'd joined up as a young man, 16, 17, he couldn't quite remember. I think he would once told me that he'd joined up as a boy soldier. They called them boy soldiers in those days, in the Royal Signals Regiment at Catterick. He remembered going down on the train. It was a long journey. The carriage was modern, one of what they were calling in those days the original Intercity 125s. He got out and was met by a sergeant recruiter standing smartly in his uniform, his boots polished, his cap badge gleaming with the little symbol of Mercury, the winged messenger, on it. Royal Corps of Signals, Catterick. Thinking back now, he could hardly remember those first days in barracks. He could hardly remember the lick and polish, the spick and span, the shining the floor with massive, great, long, heavy brushes, the on parade, on parade, on parade, the stand still, stand with tension, the salute, pay and pay packet correct, being said every time he approached the table to be paid weekly in pounds and silver coins. He once asked, "What would I say if the pay and pay packet were not correct, sir?" to an officer. The officer said, "Well, you'll still say pay and pay packet correct, sir, and then talk about it afterwards." This was his lot. Since he had come out the army, since he was injured, losing most of his right leg to an explosive, well, an improvised explosive device. Since he'd come out the army, Tim Spigot was disabled. He felt angry at the loss of that leg. He felt that he had been robbed, and he felt even more robbed now that he slept on the street, ate what people would give him, and held out a little cardboard sign saying ex-Royal Signals veteran. Some people passed him by coldly. Some sneered. Some even said, "Get a job," like they were singing it. He was a veteran. He'd lost a leg. And he saw a government that didn't care. He'd applied for all the benefits and all the grants and whatever, and he had constantly been turned down because of service payments he got when he was medically retired from the British Army. He pulled a sleeping bag back around his head again. The chill was more bitter now. It reached into his bones, cooled his heart, his thoughts, his reasoning. He wanted just to blank it out. He wanted it all to go away. It wouldn't. He would be facing this again tomorrow. As he listened to the final late night revellers, he felt no desire to revel. He had nothing to celebrate. He had only himself and this cold place. He wondered for how long even that would be before he drifted into sleep.